Hey, how's it going everybody? This is top 25 skylines in North America. Now this video was recommended to me by a subscriber of mine called Casey Maddow. He won the contest that I just did 2 days ago where I asked you guys, I did it through a post, so in case you haven't seen that, go check it out, you can find it on my channel, where I asked you guys how do you usually watch YouTube videos in general, like where, when and how, and how do you watch my videos? You know, what kind of, where are you at the moment, how do you have the notifications on, turned on, all that sort of stuff. And I found his answers to be the most interesting one, because he watches me on an airplane seat TV. He says he flies every week, so he just, you know, catches up every time he's on the plane. I find that quite cool. But anyway, he suggested this video, Skylines, and it's actually quite funny he does that, because you'd think that Skylines should be interesting to me, because I want to own a penthouse at some point in my life, and well, that's the first thing you'll notice when you have one. So let's do this. It's by Geography King, by the way.
Howdy, it's Kyle counting down the top 25 skylines in North America.
Oh, I checked already. The audio seems to be a bit off here, but still, it's the right video.
Skyline is a very important aspect of a city. It's often the first impression people get. So if you're just driving through a city, you're not really going to stop there. It might be really the only thing you get to see about it. So it might make a city look bigger or smaller than it really is. Might make a city look nicer or worse than it really is. And if you're going to fly into it, kind of lean over into the window seat as you're flying over to kind of see the downtown and how the skyscrapers look. So I think a skyline is an extremely important part of a city.
It is.
And in this video, I'm going to count down the top 25 ones in North America. And of course, skylines are constantly changing. There's a ton of skyscrapers currently under construction. So, you know, what might be kind of a lame skyline right now might be a fantastic one in 10 years. And, you know, other cities might have the exact same skyline in 10 years. So it's going to be changing. And of course, anytime there's a countdown, there's always going to be in the eye of the beholder. So it's certainly just my opinion. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead and start the countdown right now with number 25.
I'll give my rating out on them as well, just to let you know, based on the 3 skylines that I've seen throughout my life. Because by the way, in Germany, you don't actually, where I'm from, you don't actually have any sort of skylines really. There are maybe 3-4 cities where you have tall buildings, and that's pretty much it. Because Germans don't build tall. That's what Americans do.
Charlotte is a very fast-growing city. It's one of the most important financial cities in the country. It's the headquarters of Bank of America, the largest bank in the country, and that's what the tallest skyscraper there is. It's the Bank of America Tower, and for a long time it was the only really tall skyscraper in town. It looked kind of silly because the next tallest building wasn't anywhere near as tall, but there's been other big ones built since then, so the Bank of America Tower doesn't look so lonely way up there. But the Charlotte skyline is pretty cool looking. It's the 24th largest metro area in the country and the 25th best skyline. San Diego is the 19th
That's a 6 out of 10.
19th largest metro area in the country, so the skyline doesn't make it look quite as large as it really is. There aren't any super tall skyscrapers there, and the density isn't as high as some of these other cities on the list, but the architecture is pretty cool, and most of the buildings are pretty light colored, so it's pretty fitting for a coastal city with a lot of nice warm weather. So San Diego makes it look really cool right there along the water, so a really nice skyline.
Dude, it's fucking amazing. It kind of reminds me of Miami a little bit.
Even without really tall skyscrapers. Edmonton, Alberta is the first of several surprising ones that are going to be on this list, because it really isn't that big. It's only about 1 million people in the Edmonton area, so you know, it's just not that terribly large. But you look at the skyline, it makes it look a lot larger than it really is. You would think Edmonton is a much bigger city than just 1 million people. Really cool high rises, nice density, good cluster there. So you just, again, like I was saying in the beginning of the video, a skyline can make a city look way bigger or smaller than it really is. So San Diego's 3 times the size of Edmonton, but you would never guess that by looking at the skylines. Edmonton is a really cool one. Minneapolis is another one where the skyline doesn't make it look quite as large as it really is. It's about 3.5 million people in the Twin Cities metro area. It's the 17th largest metro in the country. So, you know, it doesn't quite look that large, but it's still a pretty cool looking skyline. There isn't a huge number of skyscrapers.
And of course, you know, these are edited videos, these are edited pictures, so that's not really how they look in real life. I do have to say though, the skyline, and by no means I'm an expert, of New York was quite cool, especially at night.
But the ones it has are pretty tall. And a lot of these flatter Midwestern cities, you're going to have like this big cluster, and then once you get outside the city, it's really flat. So you don't really have the need to build up so much right in the heart of downtown. So that's why.
Dude, that's so cool that you can actually, can you live there on all those places right there? If that's the case, that's actually, I mean, Dude, you have like a fucking river right outside your door. That's amazing. I feel like, would you? Okay, what do you think? Should a skyline look better at night or at day? I feel like it should look better at night
Right,
with
it's
the
not going
lights
to look
on.
quite as big as the city really is, but still a very nice skyline. Montreal is another one where by just looking at downtown, you might not think the city is as large as it really is. There's a law that states skyscrapers can't be taller than Mount Royal, which
Oh,
is
that's
the mountain that sits
Canada.
right next to downtown. And when you see, these photos from a higher vantage point of the skyscrapers, it's probably going to be from Mount Royal, which is a very good vantage point. So I love Montreal. It's a great place to visit. And the downtown is really nice and all, but again, the city doesn't look quite as large as it really is just by looking at the skyscrapers in downtown. So cool skyline, but not one of the absolute best in North America. Detroit is one that will keep going down in the rankings on a list like this through the years, as there aren't really any new skyscrapers going up in Detroit. But I do like the way you have the mix of some of the older Gothic style high rises with the the more recent Renaissance Center, which is the one that's got the cylinder surrounded by the smaller high rise there. So it's right there along the river. Probably 50 years ago, Detroit might have had one of the best absolute skylines because most of those buildings were there 50 years ago. But, again, we all know the problems with Detroit, but still has a pretty cool, nice skyline that makes the city look at least a little bit better than it might be.
In case you haven't played the game called Deus Ex, I think it takes place in Detroit. So ever since, and it's one of my favorite games. So ever since I played that game, Detroit, even though it might not be one of the best cities in real life, it certainly is, fictionally speaking.
And Detroit's been
Just an
improving a little
interesting
bit,
thing.
but the skyline isn't
Interesting
really
city.
changing much. Calgary, Alberta, just like Edmonton a few hours north, has a downtown that makes it look a lot larger than it really is. There are only about 1.1 million people or so in the Calgary area, which isn't that terribly large compared to some of these other cities on the list, but you wouldn't think so. But looking at the downtown, it's very impressive. A lot of new construction going up, and
Calgary.
it just looks really nice. And Calgary's a very nice town.
That's pretty cool.
And I'm not sure exactly why, but for the most part, some of these Canadian cities have a more impressive looking skyline than you would expect for the size of the city. Again, I'm not really sure exactly why, but Calgary, like Edmonton, has a very nice one, even though the city isn't that terribly large. Cincinnati is another one where you'll think the city's a lot larger than it really.
Ooh, Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is one of those places, Ohio. So that's inside the States. I thought he was only doing it in the States, but now I realize North America is obviously Canada as well. But isn't Mexico also considered North America? I think Cincinnati has a high German influence. Doesn't that mean there's a lot of German influence on the city? In case you know more about that, let me know.
It really is by looking at the downtown. It's only got about 2 million people in the metro area, which makes it about the 30th largest in the U.S. But by looking at the downtown, you would think it's quite a bit larger. And kind of like Detroit, there's a lot of older kind of Gothic style high rises because it was a much more important city relative to the U.S. 50, 60 years ago. But you also have some pretty recent ones that have gone up as well. So I just like the juxtaposition of them. You got the nice architecture differentiations and the way things look with the density and right there along the river. So overall, I think it's just a really cool looking skyline. And again, it makes the city look a lot larger than it really is. Atlanta's skyline is a little bit disappointing because it's the 11th largest metropolitan area in the U.S. at about 5.5 million people.
Atlanta will always be the stripper. Atlanta will forever be the stripper city for me.
But the downtown doesn't make it look quite that large, and there's some really nice high rises there, some very tall skyscrapers, but it doesn't have the density, so there aren't so many of them clustered together. And what hurts the skyline a little bit is that you have kind of competing downtowns. You have the immediate downtown, but then you also have a few miles away the Midtown Buckhead area. So you have a separate cluster. So if all those high rises were together in one cluster, it would look super impressive. But when they're spread out a little bit, it doesn't quite look as nice as it should, or it doesn't quite look as as big time as it is, because Atlanta is the largest city, the largest metro area in the Southeast, and it's an unofficial capital of the South. So for me, it should have a better looking skyline than it does. It is a very nice one, but it doesn't quite hold up to its 11th largest city in the U.S. standard. Miami has a skyline that's very fitting for the city. It's a very hot city, of course, so you have a lot of light colored buildings, and the density is very nice, and most of them are hotels or condos, so they look a little bit different than banks or office complex high rises. So Again, very fitting for Miami. It's kind of like San Diego, but it's a lot larger than San Diego, so you have a little more of an impressive skyline. But there are a lot more of them going up too. So you check back in 5 years, there'll be several more condo high-rises going up in Miami. That just means more people to evacuate in the next hurricane. But yeah, Miami, really cool skyline, very fitting for the city.
Dude, is anyone actually from Miami? I feel like I have so many people from the States now, from LA, San Diego, Texas, like Dallas, Las Vegas, Chicago. I have quite a lot of peeps out there in Chicago. New York City. Oh, New York City. Big one. Colorado as well. I have some people from out there. But Florida? Not so many, I believe. Man, I want to go to Miami. I don't know why. Maybe it's because when I was growing up, wie soll ich sagen? Oh shit, that was actually in German. I don't know how to say it, but I think when I was growing up, I used to watch a lot of CSI Miami. I think that's why. I don't know. And in CSI Miami, it was obviously, if you've never seen it, obviously there's a lot of crime happening in the show, and maybe there's a lot of crime in real life as well. But I don't know, it's just been interesting ever since.
Los Angeles has probably the most disappointing skyline in the entire U.S. in that it looks very nice, but there are 4 million people in L.A., 10 million people in L.A. County, and almost 20 million people in the metro area. So it doesn't make it look quite that large. And of course, L.A. is much more spread out, so you don't have the need for all the vertical development right downtown. And you also have, kind of like Atlanta, there's some competing downtowns like Century City or the Warner Center, and suburbs like Long Beach or Glendale have a good cluster of high rises as well. So downtown Los Angeles doesn't look quite as impressive as it should. Actually, it doesn't look anywhere near as impressive as it should, but it does still look pretty cool, especially those 3 days of the year when there's no smog and you can get the mountains in the background. Houston is the 4th largest city in the U.S. with over 2 million people, and there are about 6 million people in the metro area. So it's a huge city. But the downtown doesn't make it look quite as large as it really is. So you don't have as many condos or living kind of high-rises right downtown like you have in a lot of other cities. Most of them are, office
Houston,
complexes.
Texas.
And kind of like L.A. and Atlanta, you have a secondary cluster of high-rises not too far from downtown. But in Houston's case, it's the Houston Medical Center. So that's kind of unique in that, a secondary cluster of high-rises is all medical stuff. But, you do have some more condo and living kind of high-rises going up as more people want to move closer to downtown. But for right now, Houston doesn't look quite as large as it really is, but it is still a pretty cool looking skyline. Denver.
I'm not 100% impressed. I mean, I'm not impressed yet.
Is the 14th largest metro area in the U.S. with about 4 million people. So the skyline makes it look right about where it is in terms of its size. And of course, a lot of these ones out west, you can make it look a lot nicer by framing it with the mountains in the background. But I like some of the architecture as well, and just the density of the high rises. So you got that one that's like the most iconic one where it looks like it would be rounded at the top, but it was chopped off. And you also have a lot of new high rises going up. So Denver is one of the cities where you have a bit of a building boom going on. So this will be a much different looking skyline in 5-10 years, but even right now it is still very impressive. Dallas, kind of like Houston, has a skyline that undermines the size of the city.
He says Dallas, kind of like Houston. No shit.
They're approaching 6.5 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, but the downtown doesn't make it look quite...
Dude, what is that ball up there, that ball building? And why is the other one green?
That large, but it is still a pretty cool looking skyline. I like the way the buildings light up, and that's also a very important thing too. Not just the architecture, but also the lighting. And you got the very iconic God's microphone, and that's not me calling it that. That's what they call it. So it's kind of silly looking.
God's
microphone. I do like kind of occasional silly looking something like that. So it's a very nice looking skyline. But of course, Dallas has to compete with Fort Worth in terms of its overall skyline. So if you were to have all the high rises of downtown and Fort Worth combined into one major downtown, it would look a lot nicer. But, still very nice, but with it being the 6th largest metro in the U.S., doesn't quite look that large. Boston doesn't have a large number of super tall skyscrapers, but it makes up for it with the density and the juxtaposition of the different architectural styles. So I just like some of the differences in how some of these buildings look and how they're clustered and right there along the waterfront. This makes it look really cool. So you got some older ones and some newer ones. So I just think the overall look of the Boston skyline is really great. Philadelphia has a really nice mix of architectural styles that makes up its skyline. back when skyscrapers were all the hot new rays, it was one of the first cities in the country to start getting them. So you have a lot of really old looking skyscrapers, and you got some of those Cold War era ugly looking bricks, and you got the tallest ones in the city are more recent construction. So just a really nice mix of the three different eras, and just very tightly packed, good density to it. You got the Independence National Park right there, so it's a really cool mix of the old and new right downtown. So pretty cool skyscrapers that make the city look as big as it really is. Of all the cities in the U.S., Seattle is the one that's currently building the most skyscrapers.
Dude, it seems like there's the world's about to go down, and that's in this picture.
There's a huge building boom going on right downtown, and most of the new high-rises are housing or condo-style high-rises. There are also some office complexes as well, but there's a ton of people moving to Seattle, moving to downtown Seattle, and just making the city a lot larger. It's the 13th largest metro area in the country with over 4.5 million people. It's just huge and growing. And, the downtown looks really nice, and you have the rolling hills in the city, and it's really green. And of course, you can frame it with Mount Rainier in the background, and you have the Space Needle there. Just overall a very cool looking skyline that's only going to get a lot nicer and more impressive through the years. Honolulu is the city a lot of Americans.
I was going to say, just letting you know, the capital, because he said 4.3 million or something like this. Just letting you know, Berlin is the capital of Germany, where I'm from, and Berlin only has 3.6 million. So, just one of many cities. Fucking the States has so many big cities, it's crazy.
Forget about, because it's way out there in Hawaii, and yeah, I know the Hawaii is not part of North America, but it is part of the U.S., so I'm going to include it on this list. And the skyline is very impressive, makes it look a lot larger than it really is. There's only about 950,000 people on the entire island of Oahu, so you look at the downtown, the skyline makes it look a lot larger, and you have two different clusters of high-rises. You have the actual downtown, because it is a real city after all. You have the the state government stuff, and there's some financial and insurance things going on. There's a large military presence, so there's a lot of normal things going on in Honolulu, but where most of the high-rises are in the Waikiki area, where you have mostly
Dude, you can see a helicopter in the back.
Hotels and condos right there along the beach. So this looks really cool. But you got the ocean right there in the background. You got the rolling hills and the greenery and the crater. So just a lot of really cool things to make the skyline look a lot nicer than cities that are much larger than Honolulu.
True.
By far the most
now we're talking Las Vegas. I told you.
Ridiculous skyline in North America, if not the entire world, is Las Vegas.
What do you mean ridiculous? It's the greatest.
This pure insanity, especially at night when it's all lit up. I mean, you just have all this ridiculous architecture. You've got a mock-up of the Manhattan skyline. You've got a medieval castle. You've got one that's just all gold windows. You have a fake Eiffel Tower. You have a giant pyramid. I mean, it's just completely stupid. They're always being torn down. There's other ones being built, and the next one's going to be more ridiculous than the previous one. You have a Space Needle looking thing. I mean, it's just whatever kind of ridiculousness you can come up with, it's going to be in Las Vegas. But at the same time, it's pretty cool looking and very iconic, of course, and especially at night. During the daytime, it looks okay, but at nighttime is when it really shines, literally. But I don't know. I think it's really cool looking, and it is definitely one of.
Oh no, I've also seen. It also looks amazing when the sun's like about to go down.
The better skylines in the U.S., even though it is obviously for different reasons than these other cities on this list. San Francisco is a city that, due to its geography, can only grow vertically. I mean, there's nowhere for it to grow horizontally. It has to grow up. So, you have several new high-rises that are being built. For the longest time, the Pyramid, which is the most iconic high-rise downtown, was the tallest one, although there is one that surpassed it since, and there are some other new ones that are going up. So you have kind of a building boom in San Francisco. And again, it has to be high-rises because you just can't grow horizontally. So you're going to see more of a vertical change in the city. And with the rolling hills around there and the bridges and the bay, you can frame it and look really cool. So no matter which angle you take it from, it's just a really nice-looking downtown. And, of course, there's that really iconic photo where you're just across the north.
Dude, the Gold Gate Bridge, I remember. Is it still? I remember, if I do remember correctly, that if you want to pass the Golden Gate Bridge, you actually have to pay. Or am I mixing this up with something else right now? Because when I was in San Francisco, I was not in I wasn't staying in San Francisco, but I was staying in San Rafael. And I think somewhere we had to pay to get over a bridge. Like, what the hell?
North end of the Golden Gate Bridge, you can see the downtown from there. So it's a beautiful skyline, easily one of the best in North America. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know how much I love Pittsburgh's skyline. It's just a really cool look to it. And it's the geography that causes it to be like that, because you have it all on that point at the confluence of the river. So the downtown is kind of squeezed onto this little piece of land.
UPMC, what is UPMC?
So it kind of had to grow vertically. It just looks really cool, and there are mountains surrounding it, so you can get up onto these vantage points like Mount Washington and just get some really cool shots of it. And when you drive into it from any direction, it just looks so nice. So even though it's only the 23rd largest metro area in the country, it just looks a lot bigger than it really is. So I just love it. It's one of the best skylines in the U.S. Another city whose skyline is dictated by its geography is Vancouver. And this is just a fantastic cluster of tightly packed skyscrapers right downtown. You know, on this little tiny piece of land surrounded by water, so it has to grow vertically. You know, most of them are condos and housing type things, but there are also some office complexes and government stuff as well. But it just looks so cool. It's so unique. There's nothing else.
Dude, man, it's like fucking. You got boats, right? You got if you're wealthy, right, and you got a lot of money. I mean, just fucking doing your 1 hour break. Just take your yacht, go to your yacht, and just have a cruise, like drive around for like half an hour. I mean, I do that.
Quite like this in North America. I mean, it's fantastic. So it's one of my favorite cities on all of North America. So it's the third largest city in Canada. It's about 2.3 million people total. So it'd be about 22nd, 23rd largest metro area in the U.S. But it's just a great, wonderful, really iconic, really unique downtown. Easily one of the best skylines in North America.
Jesus.
At number 3 is Toronto. It's the largest city in Canada with about 5 million people, and the skyline makes it look even bigger than that. You, of course, have the CN Tower there, the nice waterfront area, and there are more skyscrapers under construction in Toronto than just about anywhere else on the planet. There are just like 30 or so skyscrapers currently being built. And right now, Toronto's undergoing a huge change in which they're just building so much condo and housing type high-rises right downtown that people are just all flocking there. And I think the intent is to make it much more of a Manhattan-style downtown where everything is walking and biking and less people moving way out in the suburbs and driving 1 hour into town for work. So
it's a
huge change. So kind of like Seattle, if I were to do this video in 10 years, it might be the best skyline on the planet. Who knows? But there's so much growth going on there. I mean, it's great. It already looks really cool, and it's only going to get a lot better. The second best skyline in North America is Chicago, and as great as Toronto's is.
Dude, Chicago is it seems like Chicago is best and worst in so many things.
Chicago's dwarfs it. Of course, like I was saying, Toronto's growing a lot more, so in 10 years it might be different. But for right now, Chicago is leaps and bounds ahead of Toronto in terms of its skyline, and way ahead of anywhere else previously mentioned on this list. It's just crazy. And it's not just the huge number of skyscrapers, and there are a ton of them, and it's not just the density of them, because they are super tightly packed, but it's also just how tall they are. These are just so much taller than the other skyscrapers in some of these other cities. And of course, we all know the Willis Tower, which was previously the Sears Tower, but there are so many of them, other ones that are just super tall. So it's great, and they're still building a lot more as well. And the first time I visited Chicago,
I found it amazing that you would never even see this here in Germany, that you have, those yachts or those boats in the middle of a huge city like that. Crazy. That's so fucking cool, though.
I'd already been to almost all the other major cities in the U.S., and I was like, all right, whatever, it's going to be another big...
Did he say New York yet? Come on.
City, but I was like, holy crap, this just looks so much bigger than all the other ones.
He's going to say New York.
Fantastic downtown, wonderful skyline. And you will never guess what number 1 is. What is the best skyline in North America? It's, of course, Des Moines. With the vast sea of flat prairie you can see in the background, nothing comes even close to this. Okay, obviously it's New York City. This is not debatable. This is the most fantastic skyline in the entire Western Hemisphere, perhaps even the world. Right now, China and some of the Southeastern Asian biggest cities are, building these incredible skyscrapers, but I think still right now Manhattan's the king. And just like Chicago is leaps and bounds ahead of everything else right now, Manhattan is leaps and bounds ahead of Chicago. This is just completely insane. And I hadn't visited New York until after I visited Chicago, so I knew it was going to be a lot bigger, but I was like, holy crap, this is so much bigger. It's complete insanity in terms of high-rises. So I've been to all of the major cities in the U.S. except for Boston, and it's incredible just how much bigger it is than all the other ones in terms of its skyline and downtown. And as terms of people go in the metro area, it's not much larger than Los Angeles, but because everything in Manhattan is just vertical, it's just it just goes straight up, and everything in LA goes out. So Manhattan makes New York look 10 times larger than LA, even though they're about the same size. So if you haven't been to New York, but you've been to other major cities, you will be surprised at just how much bigger New York seems and all the other. I mean, it is bigger, but just how much more bigger it looks than even that you were expecting. So wonderful skyline, beautiful. You have, of course, the iconic Empire State Building. You have the all-new World Trade Center. And there's a lot of these like pencil-thin high-rises going up. There's like not a square foot of land available in Manhattan. So all they can do is like pencil-thin high-rises. I'm not sure how that'll hold up in a huge windstorm. I wouldn't want to be on the 100th floor of that thing when there's a Category 1 hurricane blowing through. But that's what they're doing right now. An incredible skyline. You know, do yourself a favor. At some point in your life, walk around Manhattan. It is fantastic. Skylines are very important to your city. Again, it's a big first impression people they're going to get. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about these North American skylines is that they're not really keeping up with some of these east and south.
Dude, it's so strange because imagine you take a shit on the 100th floor. That means your turd is literally traveling. It's passing, like on its way down, it's passing 100 floors. So 100, let's say there's 10 people working on it. That's too little, maybe 30 people working on the floor. It's got to pass 3,000. 3,000 times 100. Well, actually, no, 3,000, 2,970, probably. Yeah, your turd is going to pass a lot of people before it gets to its end, before it reaches the end or the bottom. So much for that.
Hurricane blowing through into your city.
Random thought.
It's a big first impression people they're going to get. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about these North American skylines is that they're not really keeping up with some of these East and Southeast Asian ones. So you look at Tokyo and Shanghai and Hong Kong and Singapore, and of course you got Dubai, these ridiculous ones here, but you know, much more unique architecture. I think they're taking a little more care into, you know, how it looks overall, because it really is so important.
True.
And there isn't quite, at least seemingly, there isn't quite as much, you know, architectural.
Because to me, it's not really a nice skyline if they're just tall buildings, but they all look the same, you know. That's why New York City is, I guess, a little bit different. But North American skylines, are they really great compared to international speaking, like in the world? Probably not.
Ingenuity going on with some of the stuff in the U.S. Some of these new buildings are kind of boring looking, so I like some of the not super crazy looking stuff like you get in, you know, again, Dubai. But you know, I think some of the stuff could look a lot better than it does. You know, I think some of the cities could use a new really interesting skyscraper to make the downtown look a little bit nicer. So, but overall, we have some fantastic cities in North America. Although I do feel we're kind of falling behind a little bit to some of these East Asian cities. So come on, architects, let's come up with some good stuff.
Sorry about that.
To make some new skyscrapers, to make downtowns look even better than they already do. All right, and lastly, the housekeeping here. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in stuff about U.S.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the end of the video, guys. I'm going to link the original video down in the description, so if you want to see it again on the original channel, definitely go like and subscribe to his channel, because, I mean, freaking, I don't even know how much effort goes into making these videos. You know, not just, I mean, the pictures, you know, obviously there's not much time anymore, but he has to talk about everything and make the research and rate it. But I know I didn't end up rating too much throughout the video, but still, I think I can agree that New York is number one. If you're actually working or living in one of those high buildings, let me know. I'd be more than curious. And I don't know. Ever since I was on a tall building, like at the top of the tall building, ever since then I really want to work in a high building or be at the highest floor, just live there. I don't know. I just find it amazing. I just find it cool. Yeah. But you know, it's different for everybody, guys. Anyway, again, thank you very much again to Casey Mano. I hope you enjoyed the video. If there's any other videos you would like me to react to, put the name of the video down in the comments. And yeah, other than that, go like, comment, and subscribe. And if geez, we're almost at 2K subscribers, 2,000 subscribers. Now, I was already 100. I was already happy when I reached 100 subscribers back then. But 2,000, oh boy, it's like 2,000 people clicked on that button. I don't know what to say. Guys, I appreciate every single one of you. If you enjoyed, like I said, like and subscribe. I'll see you soon. Have a great day, evening, lunch, afternoon, anything like that. See you soon. Bye bye.